We're gonna react to the max snatch competition at this year's CrossFit Games, and we're gonna start right now. What's up everybody, it's Dane Miller from GarageStrength.com, and if this is your first time to the channel and you're interested in becoming a better athlete, you wanna be more explosive, you wanna understand better movement, make sure that you like, you subscribe, and you smash that notification bell so we can help you become a beast. So I recently just returned from the Pan American Championships in Olympic weightlifting. And what ends up happening is that I really like weightlifting. I've been to multiple world championships. I've coached multiple different athletes to world championships. I've coached Haley Reichert, who medaled at the Youth World Championships, the Junior World Championships, and the Senior Pan American Championships in the 49 kilo division. Coached multiple different people to these world championships and to world championship medals. And so I love weightlifting. I love watching the snatch. I love watching the clean and jerk and seeing how things are executed, seeing how things progress. And so what pops up? CrossFit Games snatch, max snatch competition. I think that I want to see right off the bat, before we even start, I want to see how are these athletes moving? What does their technique look like? Do they have a grasp of technique? And is that going to help them execute more weight or not? And then finally, one of the more important factors here that I cover in a recent video, does weightlifting need the Olympics, is what's the format? How are they doing this? How are they presenting this to everybody? How are they making this so intense that all the fans of CrossFit actually like to watch weightlifting? And let's see, let's check it out. So basically what they're doing here is they establish a starting weight. I actually mentioned this in the video, does weightlifting need the Olympics, is they establish that point. Here's a starting point, okay? And you go head to head with a partner, and then you start, you see if you hit that or not, and then there's a timer. I think that's about a 20-second timer, and you get a time frame to hit that, right? So that 20 seconds you can hit this attempt, and if you don't hit it in that 20 seconds, then you're out. And so it ends up being very similar to high jump, very similar to pole vault, even to a point, similar to how like a wrestling match would be set up where you're going toe to toe with somebody under a time frame, right? Obviously there's no like actual combat involved. So Barnhart has decent movement. That was a little bit forward. Thorisdottir is solid. She's a well experienced, obviously. Barnhart, I think, also was the one that was power cleaning like 105 kilos, something absurd. So Haley Adams' clean was not great, but her snatch there is pretty good. She does lack a little bit of ankle mobility on that catch. It's a little forward. Brooke Wells is sort of like that perennial, solid, really solid CrossFitter. Decent technique, a little forward there when she caught that, but still. I think what's interesting too is to think about how, I think they even mentioned this in this video, is how they might warm these athletes up in the back and then they have to sit through a waiting zone before they end up going forward. Okay, so this is, I think 155? I think it's around 155 pounds. Sort of just hitting and diving under. And I think that that's one of the things, is that even this announcer, see, this is actually a key point here. A lot of CrossFitters tend to have a little bit of a hitch. And so what you'll end up seeing is like this slight delay when the bar gets past the knees. It's like the bar gets past the knees and then they almost like force like a little bit of extra movement to get that bar closer into the hip to make better contact. And I think that that's, and some of these athletes are lifting in sneakers. Ooh. So I think that that's the important factor, is right off the bat is like, one, put your weightlifting shoes on if it's just a max. And then two, understand what that good movement is of the knees. What are your knees supposed to do right off the floor? What's the bar doing as it goes around the knees? And finally, that key factor is also, if you're constantly executing with very precise technique, even when you're under a lot of fatigue, ideally you will hit that smooth movement because it's so ingrained in you. So here we're going at 195, so that's about 90 kilos, which is a solid snatch for a 59 kilo lifter. We had Kate Ware, she just got third at the national championship. She's 20 years old and just snatched 93 kilos in training, 91 on the platform at US Nationals. So that's about a little bit heavier than 195. Still a little forward there. It's heavy though. And I think that this is a key factor too, is to think, going back to what's what's that top end of where you think your weightlifting movements should be, and establish it and work towards that. And I think 100 kilos, ooh, pretty good. That was nice. I think 100 kilos to 105 kilo snatch is reasonable for women that are going to weigh between 155 to 175 pounds, anywhere in there. 175 is typically a little bit heavier, but it's still 195 for Tia. I think she competed at the 64Ks. That's very, very reasonable. This is a very achievable weight. Good movement. I always thought her grip was a little, slightly narrow. But I think what's cool is just talking about how they're presenting this is you basically go back and forth. You have that time frame to hit something. Now they're at 200 pounds, right? And, ooh, nice. T2 me here at 205. That's a little forward. She's a little forward right off the floor. I think that's the key factor here. Where is she forward? What's causing that to be forward? It's typically getting her knees back. She does keep her knees forward a little bit right off the floor, and that's going to bump it out away from her at the hip. But going back to that presentation is they have these platforms lined up next to each other. They go toe to toe, head to head, right? And then whoever's left gets to go on the main stage. And then on top of that, then they have to iron out the rest of the placements. They have a tiebreaker. So the tiebreaker is go over to the side. And I think on the side, they're going to take 145 pounds. They have to hit it for a triple as quickly as they can. So this is about, what, 65 kilos, or no, 65 kilos, I think. A little bit more than 65 kilos, but they hit that for triple and then sprint across the line. And then whoever wins the tiebreaker, in this case, wins the event, but also whoever wins the tiebreaker finishes out those placements. And I think that's a really, really cool way to do things. Track does this actually, in the high jump especially, you can have a tie and you can start to re-jump. Now, as happened this year at the Olympics, is you can also have ties where both people win, but this would be a really, really easy way for weightlifting to take some notes. Sit there and say, hey, you could have, two platforms going head to head, have 6 people on each platform, so a full session on the two combined. They go head to head and you get it done pretty quickly as you move up that ladder, and then you start at a certain point and people can pick to choose to come in at a certain point, and then you can fix that with, if somebody gets out at the same time, you can either look at attempts or you can use a tiebreaker, and this stuff can get really, really unique and a lot more entertaining. I think what also is unique with CrossFitters is that even when weights are out of position, they're so used to scrapping for them and trying to ring them in and actually get it. And one thing I noticed here too, so 225, these guys should be able to just annihilate. This is a little more than 100 kilos. These bars are shorter, slightly shorter.
18th, Apolainen will be 19th, and Baden Brown will be 20th.
And Sean, one thing I just noticed that I didn't on the women's side is those are short bars. Those are short bars for the tiebreaker. So you're an Annie talking about it felt so weird going from a 205-pound attempt to a 145, and I was like, that makes sense.
Actually, that's better movement there too. I think that's the whole thing that I haven't understood about CrossFit in the past that I see that they're improving upon is if they move with better technique, you can you can hit more weight. So it's one of those things, but that's where it goes back to. It's one of those things where it's like, if you have better understanding of technique, you can lift bigger weight, and it's actually going to help you long term as far as structural integrity is concerned. So we're at 280, this is about, what, 127 kilos. This is starting to get pretty serious, 200, 205 pound guy. But even still, 100 or an 89K lifter. So these guys would be between 89 and 96 kilos. And I would just returned from a trip where, we had a 14-year-old that snatched 241 pounds. So it's like, if a 14-year-old can hit that, you know, weighing about 180 pounds, I think it's very feasible for these guys to be able to go out and hit 280 pounds when they're, you know, 25 to 30 years old and they're professional athletes, if they understand the technique. Okay, so this dude's Brazilian. I actually think he moves pretty well. Right heel pops a little off the floor, but he just annihilates that 285. Really, really good speed on the bar. And I think that that's what you're going to start to see too, is a lot of these athletes, you know, Fikowski's snatch, I think 310. His knees are a little forward there, but that's, you know, that's good movement. A lot of these guys, as we progress through the sport and the sport matures even more, I think more and more people are going to have that base of CrossFit is going to go back to weightlifting and having really well executed, precise movement. And then as that well-executed, precise movement is the base for all their strength, because they understand that powerlifting doesn't transfer over to weightlifting, a movement like this, but snatches will transfer over to deadlifts. Good position off the floor, and that's the thing, that's a good scrap. A lot of weightlifters would quit on that, but it's a little out of position. These guys will scrap for that weight, because they're used to that, you know, especially when you're under a lot of fatigue. Your positions might not always be the best, but they know how to fight. They know how to get what they need to get. All right, so he's taking that second attempt, and this is where it's unique too, is they get a second attempt at a weight. Some of these guys do go out and hit it, but it makes it a little bit more interesting. The fans get behind them, and now he's got to go right over, hit a tiebreaker, and this is where you're going to see a triple right away. And this just shows it's about repetitive, consistent movement. So these are movements where if weightlifting did something like this would be freaking crazy, because you'd also have lifters that have to prep for that. They're peaking, and they're going to be peaking for this huge max, but they also have to be able to hit rapid triples. Yeah, this is interesting. And it happens so quickly. It's like, what, that took 14 seconds. Just add, you know, it's something unique. It adds something crazy to figure out what that placement is going to be. And I'm not saying that weightlifting has to adopt that, but this style of setting up for a competitive arena is also unique. And on top of that, nobody cares about press outs. Nobody's crying about elbow touches. It's literally just put the bar overhead into position, so there's a lot less judging. That bar, I'll say there with that done dude, is that still a little bit forward right off the floor. You can see the weights actually rolling a little bit forward. This dude from Brazil is just money all day. Great mobility. Good position into the hip.
That's just beautiful. That is a beautiful, technically sound, precise lift.
Still pushing it forward off the floor there. And that's the whole thing. It's like understanding what do you want to happen from the floor to the knee, because that's where a lot of these guys are losing it. You know, again, they're fatigued. They're going to lose that strength, that tension in their lower back. So they also have to be conditioned as such to be able to handle that. Still just a hair out front. Yeah, and then he's got that 30-second time frame to try and hit it. So 305. And that's a good weight. You know, that's very, very reasonable. The other thing is these athletes realize they're entertainers, and they get the crowd involved. They go out and smash 305. If you had people yelling before an attempt at a weightlifting meet, everybody would be upset. The athletes would be distracted. They couldn't imagine that people are actually talking and excited to watch them lift. How dare you talk before a lift? This is just like golf or tennis. So I think there's some big lessons to take away. I think CrossFitters in general do a good job of presenting everything. I think they could, in this issue, focus a little bit more on your specific movement. try and hone in on where those weak points are when they're under fatigue. And weightlifting could also take from trying to figure out a cooler way to figure out the tiebreakers. But if you need help with your snatch technique and you want to dominate at your local games, it's going to test your conditioning and your weightlifting, click on the link down below. You can head over to garagestrength.com and you can pick up our Snatch revamp program that's going to help you improve your snatch so that you can crush everybody. If you want more content around CrossFit based training, click on this card right here. Until next time, guys, peace.